Hello, this is S.K. Williams, and today I would like to talk to you about Nazis and the religion of Germany. More specifically, I would like to discuss a rather common argument that groups of militant atheists make. So, the usual arguments of whether or not Hitler was a Christian, or whether or not the Nazis as a regime declared themselves a Christian government, aren't what I'm going to be addressing here. What I'm instead going to address is a common argument that is made of the Nazis by people who are heavily critical of Christianity. This is mainly militant atheists, but it does include a few others. So what am I talking about? The claim is this: even if Hitler wasn't a Christian, with the usual prefix being even if he was pretending to be Christian to get support, they can't let go of some semblance of Christianity being linked to Hitler, but even if Hitler was not himself a Christian, it wouldn't matter, because the Germans themselves were Christian. Germany was a deeply Christian country in the 1930s and 1940s, with the overwhelming majority of people in it identifying as either Catholic or Protestant. And they all supported Hitler and advanced the Third Reich. They saw no conflict between being a Christian and supporting Hitler. In fact, they found his beliefs consonant to the point where they would themselves staff his bureaucracy, fill the ranks of his army, join his SS, and basically make the National Socialist government function. They were the society that kept it afloat, thus showing that Christians, at the very least, did not find the National Socialist philosophy incompatible with Christianity, and at worst, found it fully in line with Christian teachings and doctrine. The point of this argument is, of course, to demonstrate how Christianity is not moral, that it in fact allows for great evils, and to maintain that the Holocaust, one of the greatest evils in human history, was done by Christians and is the fault of Christians. There are, of course, several problems with this line of thinking, and I'm not going to go into most of them because I really want to focus on one. Although it will seem like more than one, but I'll get to the point when it comes to that. But I will address some of the other problems. The first being that even assuming that Christians had no problem supporting Hitler, that alone doesn't prove the Christian teachings do. As much as the atheists like saying that if a Christian does something, it's a statement about their Christian faith, they also deny this with atheists. If you point out, for example, that Stalin and Mao were atheists, they would tell you that their atheism had nothing to do with their actions, and not all atheists are alike, they don't share the same beliefs, and will usually tell you something along the line of being killed by an atheist isn't the same thing as being killed in the name of atheism. But they don't afford Christians quite the same leeway. That's because, of course, they all follow the same religion and thus have the same beliefs. They all go to the church. But that alone isn't true. Not all Christians share the same beliefs, that's why there are so many denominations, and atheists know this because they frequently point to the number of denominations as a reason why Christianity isn't true. But yet, when they make arguments about the Holocaust, they talk about how the church supported anti-Semitism, the church primed people in Germany to accept ideals like Nazis, and the church supported Hitler, and the Christian majority in Europe went along with it because it's in line with what the church taught. The atheists is presenting Christianity as this one unified religion that has beliefs shared by all Christians, and ultimately all Christians go to the same organization. But this isn't really true. Which begs the question, why should we think all Christians are for all time marred because of the Holocaust? Should a modern-day Christian living in America be blamed for the Holocaust because his religion is in line with Hitler. Does anyone really believe a modern-day British Christian is going to go about killing Jews or advocating for National Socialism? At least, not the typical British Christian. So why is it that they're so obsessed with linking Christians to the Holocaust? Which brings up another problem. There's a reason I brought up the American Christian and the British Christian. Let's look at the scenario that's being painted. According to the atheists who make this claim, or the various other people who make it who are anti-Christian, the situation in Germany is that the Christian religion introduced into German culture deep anti-Semitism and viewing Jews as Christ killers. What's more, it viewed them as irredeemable monsters. This in turn led to Christians already believing much of what Hitler would later teach, and in fact Hitler, being a devout Catholic himself in most of these tellings, was simply doing what the church had always taught, and was fully backed by the church. But again, even if he wasn't, according to this scenario, even if he was a fake Christian who was just trying to get people going along with him, the average rank-and-file German wasn't a fake Christian, and they heard the words of Hitler talking about hating the Jews and the communists and other groups, and, remembering their own religious indoctrination, found consonance with it. What Hitler was saying was completely in line with their Christian faith, and based upon the convictions to which they lived, based upon their Christian conscience, they joined Hitler because Hitler was doing the right thing according to the Christian religion. This is why the Christian religion should not be followed, because it leads to such hate. Christians should be ashamed of themselves for even creating a situation in which this happened. And if it were to happen again, it would be for the same reason. And in fact, many say that it will happen again in America. Look at all those evangelical Christians who think just like Hitler and got the new version of Hitler, Donald Trump, elected. Fine. Let's accept this logic for a minute. Because Germany was deeply Christian, they supported Hitler because Hitler's message was consonant with Christian belief. That Hitler's regime was deeply and inherently in line with Christianity, to the point where the two taught the same things, and to be a good Christian would be to follow this. Who fought Hitler in World War II? There were three main powers. There were others, but there were three main powers that moved against Hitler in the ranks of the Allies. Those three, in order of admission to the war, were the United Kingdom of Great Britain, the Soviet Union, or the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics to be formal, and the United States of America. To make this claim work, where Christians resonated with the message of Hitler and saw in Hitler's regime a way to further Christianity, you also have to accept that none of the Allied states actually found any cultural motivation in Christianity for their people. Is this true? Let's look at the governments. The Soviet Union was, in fact, explicitly atheistic. A fact that atheists like to deny because they like saying no one has ever killed in the name of atheism, and I've actually had some atheists outright deny that the Soviet Union ever implemented anything like state atheism, but they did. However, the United Kingdom was a deeply Christian country in the 1930s and 1940s. In fact, most people identified as Christians, something around 90% of the population, and something around 60% attended church at least once a week, and everyone seemed rather convinced that Christianity was true, at least on some level, and many people were motivated by Christian beliefs and principles. This is important to remember because Even before Hitler began bombing Britain, he actually made overtures to get Britain on Germany's side. He saw British people as kindred to the Germans and as natural allies. Hitler never wanted to fight Britain. He instead wanted Britain to be part of the National Socialist family. But that's the thing. Britain refused. Britain, with its Christian king who was coronated king in a church by an archbishop, and who held the title Defender of the Faith, and who was also the supreme head of the church in England, said no. The British Parliament, which had at that time an actually active House of Lords with 26 Christian bishops in it, the majority of people there being Christian, said no. The House of Commons, populated by a majority of people who professed Christianity, said no. Why did they say no? Didn't they hear Hitler's speeches? Didn't they know that his platform was inherently a Christian one? If not explicitly by claiming to be, then at least implicitly because its beliefs aligned perfectly with Christianity? Didn't they see in Hitler the same anti-Semitism that the Christian church taught? Didn't they themselves view Jews as Christ killers and wish to support him? Didn't they understand that Hitler was fighting for the vision that Christianity was fighting for? When Hitler made overtures to Britain for peace and cooperation, why didn't they see in Hitler a fellow Christian, someone that they can relate to, and someone they can ally with? And when war actually did break out, why did so many Tommies go to war perfectly willing to kill their fellow Christians who were doing nothing but fighting the good fight for the kind of world Christianity taught? A world with none of those filthy Christ-killing Jews in it. Shouldn't the Christians of Britain, sharing the same religion that the Nazis did, resist killing their fellow Christians for doing what Christians were supposed to do? The reason Christianity is evil is because Christianity motivated people to support Hitler. And we should apply that to the modern world with Christians. Modern Christians should be made to feel deeply ashamed at how their religion caused the Holocaust. Modern Christians follow a religion of hate that led to this. And if we're not careful, it'll do it again. American evangelicals, the right-wing fundamentalists that are trying to take over America, are no different than the Nazis. Their beliefs are the same. And yet when we look at the United States, we see another deeply Christian country. While it's true that the United States Constitution created a secular republic, and America operates on the principle of separation of church and state, most of the people in America in the 1940s were Christians, and rather committed to it. And the majority of those sitting in the U.S. government were also Christian. And while they would never institute a state religion, it wasn't uncommon to invoke God or even the Bible in congressional speeches. Shouldn't America have seen that National Socialist Christian Germany was fighting for a world that would be consonant with them? Why did so many Americans willingly fight the Nazis when the Nazis were their Christian brothers fighting for the same beliefs they held? The problem with shaming Christians based upon the fact that their religion was in line with the Nazis, as is evidenced by the German Christians supporting Hitler, is that Christians outside of Germany didn't support Hitler. This tells me that there's more to the Christian majority in Germany supporting Hitler than just their religion. If it was just the Christian religion, then all Christians would have found consonance with Hitler. They are trying to shame all Christians, especially in America, because their religion led to Hitler. And it clearly didn't if you're an American. It clearly didn't if you're British. It doesn't matter that Christians in Germany saw the National Socialism as completely in line with what the church taught and fit in perfectly with Christian beliefs, as it's pretty very obvious that Christians in other European countries didn't agree. The truth is, how deeply Christian Germany was in the 1920s, 30s, and 40s is a little more debatable. After Germany lost World War I, there was actually a rise in depravity, for instance, and while that was largely cleaned up with the rise of the National Socialist movement, and yeah, it did clean up depravity. I'm not saying that because I support Hitler, but it did happen. The truth of the matter is, the majority of Germans identified as Christian, but the majority were like modern-day Americans, where they identify with Christianity, but it's not their primary motivating factor. And in fact, many Christians didn't go along with Hitler. This is the same type of on-off fallacy that atheists often make. The idea that you are either a Christian or you are not. They'll often accuse you of making a no true Scotsman fallacy if you point out that not everyone who calls themselves a Christian necessarily follows the Christian faith or has it influence any part of their actions. They act as if simply identifying as a Christian means Christianity influences you, and its influence on you is exactly the same and at exactly the same strength as it is on everyone else who identifies as Christian, and that isn't true. Just like it's not really true that everyone in Germany would have necessarily been all gung-ho to support Hitler. Some of them may have said, I think Hitler has some good ideas, but yeah, I'm not really that political. Some of them may not have even kept up with the news or cared much. Some of them may have sided with Hitler just because of their job or peer pressure. But what's interesting is that we also know that many Germans, and I'm not just saying German Jews or other victims of the Holocaust, but other Christians that would have been seen as Aryans and would have been welcomed into the regime, opposed Hitler, including many churches. For example, a Protestant minister named Dietrich Bonhoeffer attempted to assassinate Hitler. There were actual movements within Germany to oppose Nazi ideals and to resist Nazi takeover of the church. And before you think this was only in Protestantism, because it's a well-known fact that the Catholic Church supported Hitler, the Catholic Church actually condemned Hitler, and many priests and bishops opposed him as well, and many of them also ended up in concentration camps. So it's not really true that the Christians in Germany supported the Nazis. The picture is more complicated than that. And it certainly isn't true that the support that was given to Hitler in Germany by a predominantly Christian populace somehow proves that his ideals are consonant with or based upon Christian ideals. Since again, the people fighting him were by and large also Christian. In fact, I forgot to mention this. While the Soviet Union embraced state atheism, their army actually allowed in Christians, and Stalin lifted the persecution of religious figures, or at least Orthodox, around the time of World War II, specifically to shore up the support for the Soviet Union against the Germans. I don't know any figures about it, and I do know that some of the Soviet military identified as atheist and communist, but many of them were Orthodox Christians, and some of them even devout Orthodox Christians. So even in the Soviet army, you had Christians fighting Hitler rather than joining him. And they had literally come out of a regime that was trying to kill them. Because as much as atheists insist that no one has ever killed in the name of atheism, and that the communists killed in the name of communism, not atheism, you had an atheist regime that wanted everyone to be an atheist, and they used force to get it, including imprisonment, mental institutions, torture, and even death. Yet, despite facing strong opposition from the Soviet government, even suffering outright persecution from the Soviet government. Christians in the Soviet Union signed up to fight in the Soviet army against their fellow Christians who were, again, according to this narrative, doing nothing more than fighting for what the church had always taught about how evil the Jews were and other such related things. Why would Christians in the Soviet Union not just defect to be with their Germans who were fellow Christians? Why not defect to Germany and help them against the Soviet Union, since the Nazi beliefs were in line with yours, and it's very clear that the Soviets weren't? The mere fact that Christians preferred an atheist army to National Socialist Germany's army tells you something. Sure, maybe they were motivated by patriotism to stay within the Soviet army, but the point is, they didn't view the Germans as their fellow Christians. The British didn't view them as their fellow Christians. The Americans didn't view them as their fellow Christians. The Belgians didn't view them as their fellow Christians. No one viewed the Nazis as their fellow Christians. So, why is it that I should pretend this majority of Hitler's support was Christian argument has any weight? This is a bit rambling. I actually comprised this based upon notes. The noise in the background is the fan. It's still hot here. And I do intend on doing a better version of this video later, but I think I did a fairly good job here. And I'm going to let you go. And thank you. God bless. And goodbye.